Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Julia, and I'm here with my good friend James. How are you doing, James?
Hi, Julia. I'm doing great, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So today's podcast is going to be really exciting because we are talking about a very important skill. It's something that can help you in many situations, especially when you are learning English. We are going to talk about building listening skills. This is a skill that helps you understand spoken language better. If you want to become good at speaking English, you first need to get really good at listening, right, James?
Yes, exactly. Listening is one of the first steps to improving your speaking skills. When you listen to English every day, you start to recognize words, understand sentences, and even get used to the rhythm of the language. This makes speaking much easier because you know how things should sound.
That's so true, and many people find listening difficult when they first start learning English, especially because there are so many different accents and ways of speaking. But the good news is that listening skills can be built with practice. It's like building a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger your listening gets.
Absolutely. And one way to practice listening is by listening to podcasts like this one. When you listen to English podcasts, you hear the words spoken at a normal speed, and you can learn how native speakers use the language in real conversations. It's much more fun and natural than just studying grammar from a textbook.
Exactly, podcasts are perfect because you can listen anytime, anywhere. You can even pause and rewind if you didn't catch something. It's a great way to improve. But James, what are some other ways people can improve their listening skills?
Good question, Julia. Another way to build listening skills is by watching TV shows or movies in English. Start with shows that you enjoy and try to watch them with subtitles in your language or in English. This helps you connect the words you hear to the meaning.
That's a great tip, and don't be afraid if you don't understand everything at first. It's normal to miss some words or phrases. The important thing is to keep going. Over time, you will start to understand more and more. Also, listening to slower English podcasts or videos is a good idea at the beginning. It's not a race. Everyone learns at their own pace.
Yes, and listening to different types of content is also helpful. For example, you can listen to news stories, interviews, or even songs in English. All of these are great ways to hear different vocabulary and sentence structures. The more variety you listen to, the better.
Right, and remember, it's not just about hearing the words. It's about understanding the meaning behind them. Sometimes people don't understand a word, but they still know what the speaker is trying to say because of the context.
Yes, context is key. If you hear a word you don't know, try to guess what it means by the situation or the other words around it. And don't worry about understanding every single word. Focus on the general idea.
That's such a good point. So, to summarize, building listening skills is essential for learning English. The more you listen, the better you will get at understanding spoken language. And remember, practice is everything. The more you practice, the stronger your listening skills will become.
Exactly. Keep listening to English every day, whether it's through podcasts, movies, or music. You'll notice improvement before you know it.
All right, that's it for part 1 of our discussion on building listening skills. Let's move on to the next part.
So let's dive deeper into some practical tips for building your listening skills. One important thing to keep in mind is listening regularly. It's just like any other skill you have to practice it often to see progress. Even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day, you can still improve your listening by making it a daily habit.
That's a great point, James. Consistency is key. If you can listen to something in English every day, even for a short time, you'll notice improvement. It doesn't have to be long. Just listen, focus, and keep practicing.
Exactly. And another great way to build listening skills is by using material that matches your level. If you're a beginner or intermediate learner, don't jump straight into very fast or difficult content. Instead, find content that is designed for learners at your level. There are podcasts and YouTube channels specifically made for English learners. They speak clearly, and the vocabulary is simpler, which makes it easier to follow.
That's so true, James. And once you start getting better at listening, you can challenge yourself by listening to more advanced materials. It's important to push yourself, but make sure you are not feeling frustrated. Start small and build up.
And don't forget about active listening. This is when you really focus on what the person is saying rather than just hearing the words. When you practice active listening, you're thinking about the meaning, the tone of voice, and even the speaker's emotions. This makes it easier to understand what's being said.
Yes, active listening is a very powerful tool. And to help with that, you can try listening to something and then summarizing what you heard. For example, after you listen to a podcast or an interview, stop and think about the main ideas. You can even write them down. This will help you remember what you heard and improve your understanding of the language.
That's a good exercise. It helps you really understand the content and notice any gaps in your knowledge. If you didn't understand a word or sentence, you can look it up and learn from it.
Right, and remember, it's okay to make mistakes along the way. When you're learning a language, it's normal not to understand everything right away. The important thing is to keep practicing and be patient with yourself.
Exactly. Listening can be challenging at first, but with time and effort, you will get better. And don't be afraid to listen to the same material over and over. The more you listen, the more familiar you will become with the words and the way they are used.
Yes, repetition is key. Sometimes you might think, I've already heard this. But trust me, hearing it again will help you understand it even more. Each time you listen, you'll pick up something new, and your listening skills will grow.
So, in the end, the best way to improve your listening is to listen regularly, focus on content that matches your level, and challenge yourself as you get better. And don't forget to practice active listening and take notes to help you remember what you hear.
That's a great summary, James. It's all about consistency, focusing on the right materials, and practicing regularly. Keep listening, keep learning, and you'll see progress over time.
Exactly, Julia. And remember, building your listening skills is a journey. It takes time, but every step you take gets you closer to becoming better at understanding English. Keep at it.
All right, that's all for now. Let's continue discussing more tips for improving your listening in the next part.
Now that we've talked about some of the best ways to practice listening, let's focus on listening to different accents. One thing that many English learners face is understanding the variety of accents in the English language. English is spoken all over the world, and people from different countries pronounce words differently. This can make listening a bit tricky, especially if you're used to just one accent.
That's a great point, James. English isn't just spoken the same way everywhere. For example, you might listen to someone from the United States and find their accent very different from someone in the UK, Australia, or even Canada. So it's important to expose yourself to as many accents as possible. The more you listen to different accents, the easier it will be to understand them.
Exactly. And don't worry if you find it hard to understand different accents at first. It's normal. Over time, as you listen to a variety of speakers, your brain will get used to the differences. And remember, there's no right or wrong accent. Every accent is unique, and they all have something valuable to offer.
That's so true. For example, when I first started listening to British English, I found it a bit hard because the pronunciation was different, and they used different vocabulary sometimes. But after listening to it more, I got better at understanding it. So don't be afraid to practice with different accents, even if it seems a little difficult at first.
Yes, and one fun way to get used to different accents is by watching movies or TV shows from different English-speaking countries. You can listen to the way the characters speak and try to recognize the accent. You can also try listening to interviews or podcasts from speakers in different parts of the world. This will help you get a better idea of the many ways English can sound.
And it's not just about accents. Pronunciation is another important part of listening. Sometimes words are pronounced differently than how we see them written. English can be tricky in this way. For example, in some accents, the R sound is stronger, while in others, it's softer or even dropped completely. The more you listen, the better you'll get at recognizing these small differences.
Right, pronunciation can change depending on the accent, and even within the same country, people may pronounce words differently. This is actually a good thing because it gives you more exposure to the variety in English. And the more you listen, the easier it becomes to identify these differences.
Exactly. And when you listen to new words, try to pay attention to how they sound, not just how they're written. Sometimes, even if you don't know the meaning of a word, you might be able to guess it based on the way it sounds or from the context of the conversation.
That's a great tip. Context is your friend. If you don't understand a word, listen to the other words around it. Often, the sentence or conversation will give you clues about the meaning. And over time, you'll start to recognize these clues more easily, making it easier to understand the whole conversation.
And one more thing don't forget about listening to songs. Songs are a great way to practice listening because they often have clear and repetitive lyrics. Even though the music might make it harder to hear every word, you can usually catch the main phrases or key vocabulary. Plus, songs are a fun way to practice.
I love that idea, Julia. Listening to music can help with both listening and vocabulary. Songs can teach you everyday expressions, slang, and new words in a fun and memorable way.
Absolutely. And when you're listening to songs, you can try to sing along to practice your pronunciation, too. It's a fun way to improve your speaking and listening skills at the same time.
So, to summarize, practicing listening to different accents, paying attention to pronunciation, and using songs as a fun way to learn are all great ways to improve your listening skills. With time, you'll get used to all the variations in English, and it will become easier to understand what people are saying.
That's exactly right, James. Keep practicing. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself with different accents and listening materials. You'll improve faster than you think.
All right, let's keep going and dive into even more tips to help with building listening skills in the next part.